All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started then. So let's, if there's anybody new who popped in after I said it earlier, there's a poll under the polls tab on the sessions area in Hopin. If you could go ahead and go into that poll and select the option that best applies for what your chapter is currently doing. We're trying to get an idea of just like for the people who are here at the session, kind of where they're at with their knowledge of the new member education modules. So, but with that being said, go ahead and start this off. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the new member education 101 portion of the chapter leaders training. So to kick things off, let me introduce you all to who I am. So my name is Andrew Blanchard. I am the Grand Inner Guard for the Executive Council. I graduated in fall 2017 with a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science, as well as a couple of other concentrations. Graduated from the Xi Beta chapter at Lawrence Tech University, just outside of Detroit. I currently work as both a software engineer and a quality assurance engineer at Accurate Technologies. I split my time between back-end development and test automation at the moment. In my free time, I also work as a tournament director for State Champs Esports. We enable high school students all across the Midwest an opportunity to compete in a variety of esports titles, including League of Legends, Valorant, Overwatch, Rocket League, and the like. So here's my contact information for anyone who wants to jot it down. The slides should be shared with everybody afterwards, and as well, the sessions are being recorded. So if you don't want to jot it down now, we can always do that later. So on top of being the Grand Inner Guard, I served as Chapter Support National Operations Manager and as a Great Lakes Regional Director. Like many of you guys, I'm sure, I've also served as chapter officers. What you saw before and what I'll show you now, the short list of all the different positions I held as an active in my chapter. If your chapter does signatures with officer position letters, here's what that looks like for me. It's long. Tiny chapter and being active for 6 years means you get around. But the most important position I held for tonight's event was new member educator. I was a new member educator for my chapter for 3 semesters. And a lot has changed since I held that position back in 2012. So, why are we here today? I'm going to be walking you through these 3 models and a short how-to, as well as we're going to discuss some of the reasons behind them and the things that as new member educators you should keep in mind. If any of you guys are here and aren't new member educators, but you're here for your new member educator, be sure to pass along whatever information you can. So, back in 2012, the convention ordered the creation of new member education manuals to be used in preparation of potential new members' membership into Theta Tau. The Executive Council created 3 versions for our chapter: the basic, the standard, and the non-traditional. Briefly put, the basic model is tailored for use by colonies, new chapters, and chapters that need to get back to the basics. Their core needs are in the new member education program. There are also smaller chapters in general. It's for chapters that maybe haven't also run one of these models in the past. It's a great way to introduce not only your potential new members, but also your active members to the process. The standard model should likely be used by most of our chapters. It includes activities specifically designed to facilitate pledges and members getting to know one another in the larger chapter that we're experiencing today, say like 50 or so members. Finally, we have the non-traditional model. It's going to provide activities designed for chapters that are either unhoused or may have difficulty reserving meeting spaces on campus. These could also be good for commuter-heavy schools or chapters that are still doing the hybrid virtual schooling that we see in today's day and age. For this presentation, most of what I'm going to be discussing comes from the standard model. There are only minor differences between the different models, such as less activities in a full chapter event for the basic model and an 8-week program instead of the 10-week program for the non-traditional model. So, why do I care? There are a few reasons that you should care about these models and how to use them. First, from a national perspective, it allows us to guarantee that every potential new member, both at your chapter and abroad, will receive a bare minimum quality experience while going through the new member education process. Of course, chapters can always improve upon these experiences, but this way, all members will have at least one experience they can all share. It drastically reduces the chances of health and safety incidents occurring. You're going to hear it time and time again, but almost half of the health and safety incidents that we investigated this last semester were at least tangentially related to chapters not following these processes, either hazing or otherwise. One of these chapters is now under temporary probation for 2 years. The events, activities, and information that's covered in these models should decrease, if not completely remove, the risk of being investigated for hazing and other incidents. It'll also relieve some of the stress for you new member educators. It's a hard job, whether from a poor transition or chapter traditions where the newest new member educator gets to decide their own process. This takes all the guesswork out of what's the chapter doing this semester. Finally, and more importantly, it reduces the amount you're going to pay to us. Starting in 2018, we have started charging chapters insurance premiums for non-compliance with any of our 3 model standards. It's tough, but it's important to our insurance providers that we have done everything we can as a national body to reduce the risk of hazing and other health and safety incidents. They've reviewed these documents and have given us the okay to use them without problems. You can continue to use your own process or make changes to the ones we've provided. But if you opt into that and you don't want an insurance premium, then your entire process, including any changes, must be submitted to your RD no later than 1 month before your first new member is picked. So, what do I need to know if I'm going to be using this model? If you've taken a look at any of them, it can be a little daunting. There's between 114 and 121 pages, depending on which model you're looking at. And that's a lot to digest, but it's not all for the new member educator. The models are divided into 3 sections: an instructor's manual, handouts, and the potential new member workbook. The instructor's manual is just that. It's your go-to on how to organize, prepare, and execute the entire new member education process. It takes about the first 50 pages or so of the model, so already we've shrunk the amount of work you need to worry about by more than half. The instructor's manual addresses what to do before the process starts, before week 1, and what to do for each week thereafter. It offers activity suggestions, assignments, and information sessions. All of this is prepared in advance for you. And the next part of the models are the handouts. These are going to other members of the chapter so that they can execute what they need to for the different parts. Handouts for the members, maybe for one of the week's activities, could be guidelines or sample questions for interviews, Big Brother assignments. There's outlines in there for your chapter leaders. So during the week that's devoted to chapter operations, they know what to talk about. These take up about the next 10 or so pages. There's not much, but just make sure you get these into the right hands before they need them. The last section is the potential new member workbook. This takes up the rest of the model, and it's for you guys to print for each of the potential new members to keep with them. It's important to print these out before the first meeting. We want the burden of printing and filling out information to lay on our new member educators, not our potential new members who just got pinned and don't know what they're doing. There are some things in there that you're going to be filling out. Most of the workbook, though, just lays out the week's activities and assignments for the potential new members in a way that's easy to digest. So you've probably caught on by now that I'm trying not to call them pledges. So let me show you the definition of pledge. When used as a noun, pledge describes the oath one makes for the fraternity. It does not describe a human. A pledge is a promise, not a person. As new member educators, we expect you guys to be leading the charge on making the new member education process welcoming to everyone. And it all starts with a name. This is part of a national movement to move away from the term pledge and begin using the more appropriate potential new member. And if you've ever seen a movie like Animal House, you know pledge has a pretty poor connotation to it. Since this movement is fairly new in the last 4 years or so, throughout all three models, you will see a heavy use of the term pledge. These were written in 2012. Simply replace this with the appropriate term potential new member when addressing them and throughout the model. We're hoping to release an updated version of the models with the correct terminology in the near future, so keep a lookout for this. Here are a few examples of commonly used terms and their replacements. Pledge, pledge class, pledging, pledge instructor, pledge master, pledge leader, whatever you may use. Here's ways to replace those. So, now what? On to the actual process. I'm going to break this down into 3 parts, but remember, I'm using the standard model here. It may differ for your chapter if you decide to use the basic or the non-traditional. There's a process overview. What can you expect? We're going to go over what to do before week 1. And we're going to give an example of one of the weeks played out in full. Afterwards, I'm going to show you the model and give you a better visual on what you need to do. So here's the process overview. The new member education program of Theta Tau is a valuable tool for preparing new members for the responsibilities of the fraternity. It can also be a great resource in your position as the new member educator. There are 4 ultimate goals of the new member education process. 1, build brotherhood among all of its members, both new and old. The sense of brotherhood we gain through membership is one of the most valuable aspects of Theta Tau and fraternities in general. Each time we initiate new members, the brotherhood changes. The education program needs to account for this change by ensuring that our potential new members are effectively assimilated into our membership. 2, learn the history, the values, the principles, the purpose, the symbols of Theta Tau and their significance. A fraternity is a unique organization and that is ultimately governed and guided by a higher purpose. It's got a set of principles. Those principles are evident in our traditions, our symbols, insignias, and core values. Members should not only know this information, but they should also understand its relevance to their daily activities, both inside and outside of the fraternity. 3, we're going to learn the structure of Theta Tau, local and national, and how it operates. A good brother will know, understand, and be actively involved in the daily business of the fraternity. Throughout this program, potential new members will work towards understanding the structure of the organization and how it operates. This involves how chapter meetings are run, what officers do, how to plan events, who reports to whom, and so much more. 4, they're going to gather skills that will be essential for membership. There are several skills that are essential to being members of Theta Tau, including event planning, decision-making, learning, management, and leadership. Many potential new members already have some of these skills, but applying them in a fraternity sense can help our potential new members become effective members. The intent here is for all members to have an opportunity to develop and hone these skills. So what I'm going to be showing you here is what your potential new members are going to use, what they're going to organize, what you're going to organize in order to achieve those goals that I listed out. First, it's the potential new member meeting, of course. It's the core component of the education program, and as it should be. Sessions range from about an hour to no more than an hour and a half. They involve activities, discussions, lessons, and checkpoints to help our potential new members move easily through our process. Next is the Theta Tau membership manual. Potential new members use Theta Tau membership manual to reference and learn information, our symbols, insignia, history, traditions, etc. During the education program and throughout their membership, they're going to be using this manual. This used to be a physical manual, but it can now be found online at thetatau.org. Encourage your potential new members to print this out in a small binder for reference, as it will be a useful tool for them throughout the rest of their membership. The next is the potential new member workbook. I discussed it earlier, but the potential new member workbook provides information, a space for notes, worksheets. Many of the activities included in the potential new member education program are laid out in this workbook. Your new members should bring it with them to every meeting. This should be printed out by the chapter for each potential new member, and you should bring it to the first meeting to provide it for them so they can hit the ground running. Next is the project. As a group, the potential new members are responsible for planning a project. The goal of this project is for the potential new members to use their expertise, work together, solve a problem. It's an exercise in teamwork and creativity. This differs for each chapter, whether it be building something for recruitment or for Greek Day, working with the chapter to improve an aspect that needs some work, whatever it may be. There are some examples in the guidelines. Next is a brotherhood event or a chapter event if you're using the basic model. As a group, the potential new members are responsible for planning either, again, the brotherhood or chapter event for the entire chapter. The new member educator teaches a session in event planning and guides the process to ensure it serves as a learn by doing exercise as opposed to a learn by failing exercise. There's also going to be study sessions. Throughout the process, potential new members should come together in study sessions, both academic and fraternal. These sessions should have the members taking an active role in teaching potential new members about their classes, as well as about the fraternity. That way, our potential new members aren't left to memorize the information provided in the membership manual by themselves. It's important that these sessions are kept hazing-free. It is easy to step over the line between studying and hazing when it comes to information that is asked to be learned or memorized. It's also how the chapter helps its potential new members study. There's a very distinct guideline between sitting down with a potential new member and working them through the different mottos, the gem, the flower, and standing them up in a line and forcing them to recite that information. If you would be uncomfortable with a professor or other faculty member walking in on your study session, you're likely studying in a way that does more harm than good. Last is the exit interview. Exit interviews are individual meetings between big and little brother pairs and the new member educated. They provide a great opportunity to evaluate the experience and identify improvements to the program for future years. What do we do before we start? Before we even get a pinned member? Well, the worst thing you can do for your newly pinned members is to be unprepared. So what do? You've just been appointed or elected as the next new member educator for your chapter, and already I hope you're focusing on the next steps. The planning guide is laid out in the new member education model, but I'm going to go over some of the things you should keep in mind. Prepare the schedule. Scheduling activities in advance helps the program run smoothly and efficiently. Create the entire schedule at least 1 month prior to the launch of the education program. You can use the steps laid out in the model to make sure you cover everything. Find a meeting space. The ideal meeting space is easily accessible. It's brightly lit. It accommodates all your potential new members as well as a few brothers. It includes movable seating, a flat floor. Try to avoid those tiered lecture halls. They're terrible for getting around. It should also have extra space for the people to move around and interact before and after the meeting. A few meetings are going to require a little bit larger space to accommodate an influx of both brothers, alumni, and faculty. So keep that in mind and when those come up. Next, print the P&M workbook. Like I said, in addition to serving as a guide through the education program, the workbook should provide information that's not found in the Theta Tau membership manual. Using the template provided in the model, you should add the following before printing it for your potential new members. Things like chapter name and designation on the cover. You should update the welcome letter with your own personal information and signature. Include chapter-specific budget and financial information, the contact information for your officers, your chapter roster, as well as local history, as well as the schedule and locations for all the events once they've been planned. Next, Familiarize yourself with the multitude of events that will be occurring throughout the education program. These include the Brotherhood chapter event, the project, the Theta Tau Challenge, which happens towards the tail end of the process, those study sessions I talked about, as well as a multitude of other events. One of those being laid out is the Alumni and Faculty Networking Reception. This is a huge event. It should be considered a major undertaking by your members. But proper execution of this event can lead to a great learning experience for not only your potential new members, but also your actives. It'll teach them networking, interpersonal skills, and career building. If your chapter wishes to execute on this event, be sure to work with a chapter officer or your PD chair, as it's likely too much for one person to organize. How to organize it and execute it is laid out in the new member manual, so take a look at it. But if your membership wishes to forego the event, it can always be substituted with an alumni interview, alumni panel, one-on-one meetings, or an alumnus presentation. All of these take place during the PD section of the new member education process, so keep that in mind. That's around weeks 4 and 5. Finally, be sure to remind your members of their roles and responsibilities. There is a significant benefit to involving all of the active members in a day-to-day activity. Although it requires a little more effort on the part of the brothers, their involvement tends to foster stronger relationships with the pledges, potential new members, and other brothers, and increase their participation in other areas of the fraternity. It also provides them with an opportunity to reflect on their experience, relearn important fraternity facts, and continue building on their personal and professional skills. The models outline a few suggestions on how to involve your members, and each model has a different approach to which brothers and how many should participate in which week's activities. Be sure to properly communicate your expectations, though, in advance. It can be easy for your members who don't know how the education process works to turn a fun event into a hazing event. So I'm going to try to walk you guys through an example week. I'm going to try to use week 2 of the standard model. The basic model forgoes one of the activities here, and the non-traditional model combines this week with the first week. So here's the instructor manual. Like I said, 121 pages. There's a lot here. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down, though, to meeting 2, Theta Tau values. This is kind of how each meeting is going to be laid out. It's going to show you approximate duration for the meeting. You can try to hit this again. Try to never go over an hour and a half. Here's a little description about the meeting. Who should attend? Like I said, in the standard model, it's going to actually address which members it recommends having attend. For this one, we're talking about the values of Theta Tau. Who knows that better than your members that have been around since the beginning? Those are your senior members. So, along with the new member educator and your prospective new members, come on and bring your senior members into this event. As a result of the session, here's our objective. We want our potential new members to be able to explain the purpose of Theta Tau, recite the motto, discuss its source, the expectations of the Theta Tau members, what the important expectations are, and describe all of our symbols in their meetings. There's a little agenda. It gives some fun names to each of the different activities and events that you're doing throughout the thing. Don't read into it too much. There's a little more apt explanation of what we're doing here, as well as what materials you're going to need to bring for this specific week. Those were laid out at the beginning of the model as well for each and every week in a nice, concise little area. So keep that in mind and pay attention to it. Here's the checklist. Make sure you follow it. So we're going to go ahead and get into kind of how the first week looks. Just as a kind of reminder, our first week is an orientation. This should be done shortly after pinning. You're going to want your potential members to interact, get to know each other a little bit. The first 2 weeks are a lot about getting to know each other. So in that vein, do a meet and greet activity, some fun little icebreaker. You can do whatever you want. Here's an example of playing a game of telephone. After your icebreaker, we're going to ask some questions about last week's assignments. So, who continued working on the personal planning exercise from last week? I know you guys are supposed to fill out the calendar and fill it out with all the other stuff that you have to do here at school, maybe at your job, back home, whatever you may do. How much time did you put into this, guys? Did you learn anything? Did you find you maybe don't have as much time on your hands as you thought you did, or maybe you just have way more than you need? Something you can lend a helping hand to some of your other PNMs. Make sure that the questions you're asking are open-ended. We want discussions. Remind your potential new members they're going to be reporting on the progress of each of their assignments at the beginning of the next meeting. If your chapter does potential new member officers, a regent, vice regent for the class itself, now's a great time to have them elect those. That way, next meeting, you can have the regent and vice regent do the reporting for the class. Brief agenda for the session. Today, guys, we're going to be focusing on the purpose and ideals of Theta Tau, what it takes to live up to them. Have your potential new members turn to their workbooks. It lays out here what pages to turn to. As long as you haven't done too much editing to the workbook, this should apply. You can go ahead and use what's laid out here as discussion points. They're a little long for me to go through entirely, but you can read them on your screen. They're just ways to kind of have a good dialogue, a way to start conversations. You're going to ask your potential new members about our different symbols. What's the flower? Do they know what our colors are, what the gem is? Ask them what they think the symbols are representative of. It's important to mention what our symbols actually stand for. You guys probably know, but those are ritually protected. They're taught to us in our initiation process. We don't want to give away the secrets of the organization in week 2. So go ahead and tell them what these symbols mean to you, if they ask. After going through the purpose, the colors, the gem, the flower, have them also add in comments and ideals that represent the symbol, the coat of arms, the grand seal, the Jacques Renault, the dark red garnet. These are all symbols of our organization. Remind them that this is all going to be on the national exam, as well as what they learned from the week prior, which is the founders of the organization. And then we're going to get into an activity. This is the kind of fun one. Again, we're trying to get our potential new members to interact with each other. So you're going to have them pair up, sit back to back, have them draw the coat of arms vocally only. They're going to sit back to back and have one of the potential new members read out what they see the coat of arms to look like, have the one behind them draw it out. After the first group's done, have the potential new members vote on which one they think is the best. There's no prizes. Competition is good for pride only, but it's fun to have the potential new members work this out amongst themselves. Afterwards, have them swap. Have the one who did the reading before, have them do the drawing. Once they're done, have them have a discussion. What elements are symbolic? What are they standing for? Share your thoughts. Have your seniors chime in. They're in this meeting. What do these symbols mean to them? Afterwards, they're going to do another activity. This one kind of evaluates our values and principles. We want them to understand the expectations of being a member. So we're doing a do's and don'ts exercise. In the workbook is going to be laid out all of our values, our principles, our purpose, our goals, all of that's laid out for them. You're going to have them read it and then develop 3 do's and 3 don'ts that they think those ideals identify. Don't let them do like opposites. Don't let them do like, do be honest with your work. Don't be dishonest with your work. It's not good work, guys. So have them do something a little more intense. Once they're finished, bring it up to the board, have them write them down, have a discussion on it. What expectations are important? What does it take to ensure that we uphold these ideals both inside and outside the chapter room? And then have the seniors chime in. Have they ever seen these expectations violated? They probably have. And if they did, how was it handled? Afterwards, ask the potential new members how we should handle these events if somebody screws up. Then have them apply these values to their daily life. Afterwards, close, review the assignments for your next week. For this one, you're going to introduce them to an assignment called Creating a Legacy. It's due on week 5, I think. So they're basically going to be researching either a founder, an alumni, a Hall of Fame laureate, one of the chapter members, somebody who's important to Theta Tau, and they're going to write a little paper about them and their contributions to the organization. By next week, they should at least show you who they've decided on. So now that we've walked through an example week, I want to show you kind of where to find the model, highlight the different sections. We're going to go through this pretty quick. Just give you a general idea of what the actual print looks like. You go to thetatau.org. Up at the top is a Students tab. Go to Resources and Publications. And down here, Recruitment and New Member Education. You can find all 3 of the models, as well as the Theta Tau membership manual I referenced, all right here. They're pretty easy. They open up the PDF. Just go ahead and print out whatever you need. But now, let's go ahead and kind of address some of the sections here for your use. Table of contents. The goals and contents I pretty much read out for you word for word. Here's a hazing policy. This is super important, guys. I cannot stress enough how easy it is to turn the T&M process into a hazing process. I've been hazed when I was joining the organization back in 2011. We didn't have a great hazing guideline. It was around, but we didn't have this process. It sucked. Like the things that I went through, I'd never wish on a potential new member. So try to make sure you follow these. Additionally, there's a P&M Bill of Rights. Hopefully you guys have seen it. If not, your potential new members will when they sign the pledge form. That's about the only place we're still using the term pledge, by the way. Here's a planning guide. Check boxes. We love to see those. Go ahead and work through this on your own time. Make sure you follow everything. It'll identify what you need to do, as well as a step-by-step guide on how to execute that alumni and faculty networking reception I talked about. Pretty convenient. Here's what you need to bring for each week's events. Make sure you have these prepared and purchased ahead, as well as when to include each of your members. Again, is it for the standard model? If you're using one of the other ones, it's going to look different. Some stuff on depledging, as well as a master planning checklist. This is your holy grail. You love to see these. Follow along with this. If you can't check box everything on this list, you did something wrong. But if you did do something wrong, hopefully that exit interview will identify it and your successor will be able to do it just a little bit better. Remember, it's a process. We're always improving. Afterwards, we'll identify the Big Brother program. Go ahead and continue to use whatever you use. We have recommendations here if you don't think yours is robust and you want some ideas, go ahead and pull this up. As well as the meetings. Each one lays out kind of exactly how I showed you earlier. So this will address meetings 1 through 10. Afterwards, we have the handouts. These are pretty quick. Just print them out and give them to the people that need them. If you read through the weeks, you'll know which ones go to which members or to potential new members or whatever. The code of conduct. This was the event that the activity we talked about in week 2. Some member profiles. Fireside chats for your chapter officers as they discuss with the potential new members what they do. Big Brother questions and interview questions if your chapter does interviews with the members. Lastly is the workbook. This is the rest of the model. It addresses, again, welcome to Theta Tau. This should be printed out by you guys and hopefully you make it look good. Change any of the wording as you see fit. We want this to be a warming and welcoming letter to the potential new members as their first introduction to you as a potential new member educator. Make sure to sign it. Make sure to fill this out. Again, it's the hazing policy. Can't stress it enough. The overview, the goals, it's all there for them as well. Here's the first thing that you need to fill out. It's the fraternity information. Pledging fee. Pledging dues. How to pay for all these things. The last thing we want is our potential new members to not know what they're doing. Here's the expectations both for you, Big Brother, the officers, and the potential new members. Here's another thing for you to fill out. It's just the contact information for your officers. It's pretty easy. So go ahead and fill all that stuff out before you print it off, as well as the schedule if you've got that planned well enough in advance, so your potential new members know what to expect. Afterwards, it's just the workbook. It's going to be for them to fill out pretty much from here on out. It's going to address week-to-week ideas. here's kind of what the ideals section looks like for the potentials. Goes over our symbols, the open motto, our values, guiding principles. That way, even if you don't know what these are off the top of your hand, you can refer to this. At the bottom of all of this is the last thing you need to do, which are the local information and the national exam. So this is the evaluation process. This is your exit interview. Here's where you'll fill out the chapter roster, who's who. Go ahead and print this out in Word, make it look nice. As well as the chapter history, if you've got one. Go ahead and throw it in there so they can learn about your chapter and what it's been through. So we've got about 2 minutes left. If anybody's got any questions, this kind of brings us to our Q&A portion. It's a lot. The new member education process is a lot. It's pretty much the entire semester for your chapter, and it involves everybody. So there's a lot to go through here, and if you weren't familiar with these beforehand, this was probably overwhelming. But these were recorded, and you should be able to access them on your own time. Get through it at your own pace if I wasn't able to cover everything. So does anybody have any questions? Thanks so much, Kevin. I really appreciate it. We put a lot of work into these. So hopefully we can get a couple more chapters to be involved with their potential better. So, but seeing as it's about 9 o'clock and there don't seem to be any questions, hopefully I covered everything you guys care about. If not, my contact information, I'll go ahead and pull it back up onto the screen. Pretty easy. First name dot last name at thetataught.org, as well as my phone number. I'm probably going to be the one leading the new rewrite of the education models, as well as the membership manual. So I'm going to be working on this for a while. So if you got any questions, reach out to me. Do you know when we can expect any communication about the change of bourbon from pledged and whatnot? So it's a summer project. We're hoping to have it out by fall. It's a lot of work. We have to change all of our documents, send it to the proofers, send it back to the insurance providers. It's a lot. But hopefully once we have it, we'll get it into everybody's hands by fall. And so keep an eye out for that. We'll make sure Jim lets you guys know. All right, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and send you back to the stage. Jim's got some wrap-up information for you, as well as, I believe, a presentation by Matt from Fired Up. So thanks so much, guys, and have a good one.